Hello, world, and welcome to the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterland, coming to you from the vacation destination known as Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and this is episode 223. Jack Frost is nipping at my nose today. Hopefully, wherever you are, it's warm enough. I will do my best to heat you up with laughter from GenX nostalgia that I got coming right up now. We're going to kick it off with a look back 30 years at the beloved and revolutionary animated film Toy Story. We're going to go back and look at what could be the worst-selling video game ever made, Uncle Henry's Playhouse. There's going to be a brand new top 5 as we look back at the top 5 worst Christmas specials ever. Watching these would be worse than getting a lump of coal in your stocking. And there'll be a brand new This Week in History and Time Capsule looking back 45 years at the murder of legendary Beatle John Lennon. All of that is coming up right now on episode 223 of the In My Footsteps podcast. Yes, I'm coming to you from the frozen tundra of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. On the day I'm recording this, it is in the high teens currently, the temperature is. I'm not looking forward to going outside later. My window that I can see to my right is just a sheet of ice on it. All I know about what's going on outside is it's sunny. Freezing cold, but sunny. I can't see much else. Thank you all so much for tuning in for your weekly dose of GenX nostalgia. I hope wherever you are, it's at least warm while you're listening to this. Of course, as we start to get into the middle of December, the big question that I always ask is, have you gotten all your shopping done for your friends, family? I usually spend the beginning of December, right after Thanksgiving, trying to think of really good, fun, creative gifts that I could give to people. And then if time runs out, it's like, well, we can get scratch tickets or gift cards. Of course, I can't start off any new episode of a podcast without thanking my Patreon subscribers. None of them will be getting a lump of coal in their stocking. Lori, Mary Lou, Ashley, Kevin, Leo, Marguerite, Neglectoid, Crystal, Matt, Dr. Shrimp, Porto Chico. Thank you all for being my biggest backers, the ones who literally put your money where your mouth is to support me, my never-ending dream to be a full-time self-employed content creator, whether that's podcasts, books, film, anything else I could think of. You too can become a Patreon subscriber for $5 a month. You get access to bonus podcast episodes. You get access to the remastered Without a Map live streams, which I did in the early days of the podcast 4 years ago or so. You will also start getting access to the Hidden Tracks new podcast episodes, little bite-sized podcasts that dive into a subject that I've spoken about on the podcast before. Typically, they were in top 5s or other segments that were lists. The debut one is coming up pretty soon. I still don't know when exactly I'm going to unleash it. Maybe Christmas Eve. We'll see. Also, before we get into the meat of the podcast, I wanted to give a bit of an announcement that the first film, my first acting role, Cape Cod Cthulhu, I filmed my parts playing the podcaster earlier in 2025. That is now available for purchase on Blu-ray. I have finally uploaded the interview that I did back from that time with cast and crew of the film. We recorded it live on set in Provincetown. There's a link to that in the podcast notes. At the end of that, there is a trailer for the film. There is also links, QR codes to buy your copy. It's already getting some good reviews. It's a low-budget, indie, campy horror film. You'll have to tell me what you think of me playing this same person. Just playing the podcaster. So there'll be more time for housekeeping at the end of the podcast. But let's get into the show, looking back 30 years at a revolutionary and historic film, and also one that was a lot of fun to watch, and that is Toy Story. Cast your minds back, won't you please, to the bygone era of the 1990s. More specifically, 1995, 30 years ago, I had just started my senior year of high school. Oh my God. The internet was around. I did not have access to it yet. There were no smartphones. There was no social media. I know to the younger listeners, it sounds like such a horrible time to be alive, but believe me, we didn't know what we didn't have. It's not like going back then with memories of now, but I'm getting off track. On Thanksgiving Eve, 1995, November 22nd, a film premiered that would change the world of animation, change the world of movies in general. Toy Story was the first full-length feature film created entirely with computer animation. It transformed the industry, launched Pixar into global dominance, and introduced audiences to characters that became cultural icons. I can remember going to see it in the theater with my friends John and Barry. I didn't know this was the dawning of a revolution in film. I thought it was a cartoon we were going to see at the theater, so I was kind of meh about it. But John, who was really accomplished and into computer animation, even then in the early 90s, he was curious to see what they did, how they did it. It blew me away what I saw, but that polished final project on the big screen, it didn't just come to life immediately, instantly. The roots of Toy Story stretch back to the early 1980s. Pixar began as the Lucasfilm Computer Division. It was later purchased by Steve Jobs in 1986. The studio's early achievements were short films that were designed to demonstrate new CGI technology. Some of the notable ones were The Adventures of Andre and Wally B, which was from 1984. You had Luxo Jr. in 1986. This is the one that introduced that iconic hopping lamp mascot that goes with Pixar. And there was Tin Toy from 1988, considered to be the direct ancestor of Toy Story because it featured a toy trying to escape a baby. Tin Toy won the Academy Award for Best Animated Short, making Pixar realize that toys were the perfect candidate for CGI because they had rigid surfaces, simple textures, something that early computers could handle. In the late 1980s, Disney saw the potential in computer animation and partnered with Pixar. Producer Ralph Guggenheim and director John Lasseter pitched a full-length CGI film based on the same themes of Tin Toy. Disney approved the project, but it had a strict condition. Pixar had to deliver a marketable, commercial kids movie with broad appeal. The early storylines for Toy Story were dramatically different from what you would see on the screen. You had Woody, who was originally a mean-spirited, sarcastic ventriloquist dummy. Buzz was a tin wind-up space toy, not a high-tech action figure. The tone was much darker, more satirical, and aimed at adults. Disney was not happy with that. On November 19, 1993, Pixar presented a rough cut to Disney executives. The film was too cynical, not funny. Woody was aggressively unlikable. Disney halted production entirely and threatened to cancel the project. Lasseter, Pete Docter, Andrew Stanton, and Joe Ranft locked themselves in a room to rethink the story. They rebuilt Toy Story around friendship, loyalty, jealousy, the fear of being replaced. Woody became more earnest and flawed rather than cruel. Buzz became a delusional but lovable hero. Disney approved the new script and production resumed. It's interesting to think about that. In an alternate universe, that first version of Toy Story got released with a darker, more adult theme. Not only do I think the film wouldn't have been as popular, the whole franchise wouldn't have been there. Maybe Pixar doesn't become what they become. And just think of all of the incredible movies that came out after Toy Story that we might not have had. Now, we got to get a little bit science-y here. For those of you that aren't interested in computer-generated images or the technological side of Toy Story, but it's fascinating to know how much effort went into the project you see on the screen. Each frame of the movie Toy Story took anywhere from 45 minutes to 30 hours to render. That turns into thousands of hours of work just to get this film on the screen. The film required 117 computers running non-stop. Over 400 digital models were created, characters, props, environments. Woody's cloth shirt and jeans required new texture mapping techniques. Buzz's glossy helmet and spacesuit required reflection and refraction modeling. Facial animation used a digital puppetry system that allowed subtle acting. Obviously, being 30 years ago, younger listeners will look at Toy Story and be able to point out, ooh, the CGI isn't as good as now. And they are right, because CGI struggled in Toy Story with humans, hair, water, fabric. But Pixar was clever. They set the story in a bedroom with plastic toys, with characters whose simple shapes fit the technology. It's kind of interesting because Sid, the villain of the story, his scary, plasticky human design was intentional because Pixar couldn't make convincing humans yet. As realistic and engrossing as Toy Story's computer animation was, the movie wouldn't have done as well without the incredible voice acting talents of the cast. Tom Hanks as Woody, he brought warmth and emotional range. Tim Allen as Buzz added comedic timing and bravado. Their chemistry was one of the film's defining strengths. Then you also had Don Rickles as Mr. Potato Head, Jim Varney, aka Ernest from all the Ernest Goes to Camp and such movies, as Slinky Dog, Wallace Shawn as Rex the Dinosaur, John Ratzenberger, aka Cliff Clavin from Cheers, as Ham. Interestingly, originally Disney wanted this to be more of a musical, with the characters doing songs in the film, but Pixar rejected the idea and had famed composer Randy Newman create the songs You've Got a Friend in Me, Strange Things, I Will Go Sailing No More. As I said a few minutes ago, I went into this film thinking, oh, we're going to see a cartoon. We're seniors in high school. My friend John, he wanted to know more about CGI. He was curious about the process, how it looked. I came out of Toy Story just blown away. Not only was I totally captivated by the story, but the broad scope of the computer-generated world, I was totally into it. There were times I lost myself in it. It was like I was watching regular actors, not toys that were computer animated. I was not the only one that felt that way. When Toy Story debuted 30 years ago, it earned universal critical acclaim. It made $401 million at the box office, which translates to about $852 million when adjusted for inflation to 2025. It's also 100% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes and received 3 Academy Award nominations, including Best Original Screenplay, which was a first for an animated film. Think about that. How many animated films do you know from that time or going back that had multiple Academy Award nominations? Because at the end of the day, it still was an animated film for children. It did go deeper than just that. I'm just kind of being facetious. But it was praised by critics for groundbreaking visuals, naturally, clever writing, emotional depth, that chemistry between Woody and Buzz, where at first they're kind of enemies, then they become friends. I think it also struck a chord with us of the Gen X generation, because the older Gen X people, by the time this came out, they were late 20s. They may have had young kids of their own that they could bring. And even though it was 1995, the film kind of gives you that feeling that it had the same ideas as far as playing with toys that could have been 80s, 70s, 60s. A cowboy, a spaceman, Mr. Potato Head, a Slinky Dog. These things were not just set in the 90s. You could have had those toys at any point in the previous 40 years. I don't think I realized it at the time, but looking back 30 years, Toy Story really changed animation and film in general forever. CGI became the new industry standard, maybe to a detriment at some points where practical effects aren't used as much in films. At some point in a future podcast episode, I'm going to do a segment about the origins of CGI, its first uses. So we'll be going back probably before Toy Story. After Toy Story, though, Disney's animation studio eventually shifted completely to CGI. Studios like DreamWorks and Blue Sky began competing directly with Pixar. Toy Story became a successful franchise. There are currently 4 Toy Story films, a Lightyear film, which was kind of a prequel. Toy Story 5 is due to be released in June of 2026. Obviously, with franchises that have lots of sequels in them, the subsequent films can dip in quality. That has not been the case for Toy Story, at least as far as Rotten Tomatoes goes. Toy Story 2 is 100%. Toy Story 3 is 98%. And Toy Story 4, oh, it's the worst one of the bunch. It's only 96% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. I know that's not the end-all be-all, but man, you imagine having 4 films in a franchise and the lowest one is a 96? It's like an A film. A big reason why these films still resonate, it's because not only is the animation incredible, the characters are relatable, but there's themes that you can relate to. Jealousy and friendship, abandonment, existential purpose, personal identity and freedom. You don't need to have these themes in some kind of stripped down, stuffy film noir. You can have it in a computer animated film with toys. It's hard to believe that this movie is 30 years old now, but I find myself saying that about a lot of different things that are aging as I age. It's still beloved though, because Toy Story is emotionally honest. It treats kids' inner lives with respect. The characters like Woody, Buzz, Jesse, Rex, Mr. Potato Head, they became modern folklore. And incredibly, despite my thoughts going in when I first saw the movie the first time, it proved that animation wasn't just for kids. It could be actual respected cinema. With that being said, I think I'll find Toy Story on some kind of streaming service tonight and watch it and think back 30 years to when I saw it for the first time, and then even further back when I was that kid like Andy playing with all my toys on my bedroom floor. This week in history, we are going back 45 years to December 8th, 1980, and the tragic murder of iconic Beatle and music legend John Lennon. By 1980, John Lennon had re-emerged into public life after a 5-year period of semi-retirement. During the house husband years, Lennon devoted himself to raising his son Sean, who was born in 1975. He stepped away from the music industry almost completely, living a quiet domestic life with wife Yoko Ono in New York City, primarily inside the Dakota, which is an iconic apartment building overlooking Central Park. In the fall of 1980, Lennon made a highly anticipated return to music with his Double Fantasy album. This was a collaborative one with Yoko. Its release on November 17, 1980, signaled a major artistic comeback. Lennon was enthusiastic, giving numerous interviews expressing the excitement about creating music again and discussing plans for a world tour, which would have been huge because he basically gave up public performing when the Beatles were over. All of that optimism was cut short only 3 weeks after Double Fantasy was released. Mark David Chapman was born in 1955 and had a troubled history long before encountering John Lennon. Chapman struggled with mental health issues, feelings of inadequacy, and obsessions with various cultural figures. In the months leading up to the murder, his fixation on Lennon grew increasingly disturbing. Chapman was obsessed with the book Catcher in the Rye, written by J.D. Salinger. He believed he was destined to embody main character Holden Caulfield's crusade against phoniness, later stating that he viewed Lennon as a phony for preaching peace while living in wealth. Chapman had once been a devout Beatles fan, but felt betrayed by Lennon's fame, wealth, and past comments, most famously the 1966 remark that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus. And most of all, Chapman exhibited clear delusional thinking, hearing internal voices, and creating elaborate fantasies in which he played important roles despite not having that in his real life. Chapman traveled to New York City specifically to find Lennon, first arriving in October 1980 with intentions to kill him, but returned home conflicted and unstable. On the morning of December 8, 1980, Chapman stayed outside the Dakota, mingling with fans who regularly waited for Lennon. He carried his copy of Double Fantasy in hopes of securing an autograph to complete his twisted plan. Shortly after 5 p.m., Lennon and Yoko Ono left the Dakota for a recording session at the Record Plant studio. As Lennon walked toward his limousine, Chapman approached him politely and presented the album. Lennon signed it, and there's a photo of it. It was captured by photographer Paul Goresh, and it's one of the creepiest pictures you'll ever see, knowing that only a few hours later, the man there will shoot and kill John Lennon. Lennon and Yoko spent several hours at the studio mixing the track Walking on Thin Ice. Lennon was in good spirits, enthusiastic, with the couple returning home unexpectedly early around 10:50 p.m. As the couple exited their limousine and walked toward the archway entrance of the Dakota, Chapman stepped out of the shadows, calling out, "Mr. Lennon." When Lennon turned, Chapman fired 5 rounds from a .38 caliber revolver. 4 shots struck Lennon in the back and shoulder. Lennon staggered into the lobby, gasping and screaming, "I'm shot, I'm shot." The Dakota's doorman, Jose Perdomo, disarmed Chapman, who then calmly removed his coat and sat down and began reading Catcher in the Rye as he waited for police. A patrol car rushed Lennon to Roosevelt Hospital with an ambulance not immediately available, and at 11:15 p.m., John Lennon was pronounced dead. The news broke nationwide when sportscaster Howard Cosell interrupted Monday Night Football with the now famous announcement.
It's just a football game, no matter who wins or loses. An unspeakable tragedy confirmed to us by ABC News in New York City. John Lennon, outside of his apartment building on the west side of New York City, the most famous perhaps of all of the Beatles, shot twice in the back, rushed to Roosevelt Hospital, dead on arrival. Hard to go back to the game after that news flash.
I don't have memories of this, but incredibly the story goes that I was sitting on the couch at 3 years old next to my father watching Monday Night Football when this announcement was made. It was a shock to millions of Lennon and Beatles fans around the world. Chapman was charged with second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison. He's still in prison. He's been eligible for parole beginning in 2000, but he's been denied every time. For many, Lennon's murder marked the symbolic end of the 1960s counterculture and any hope associated with a Beatles reunion. The most iconic memorial to Lennon is Strawberry Fields, which is a designated area in Central Park across from the Dakota. Dedicated in 1985, it features the famous Imagine mosaic, which was a gift from the city of Naples. Sadly, due to his death, sales of Double Fantasy skyrocketed. The album is great, but it's sad that his death caused it to sell better. It won the 1981 Grammy Award for Album of the Year. And this murder, it highlighted the dangers of fan access to celebrities and influenced security protocols for public figures. It is sad that the world got robbed of a Beatles reunion. When you look at the anthology that came out in 1995, that easily could have been followed up with a world tour with the whole Beatles gang together. But Mark David Chapman, he got what he wanted. When people think of John Lennon, they might not immediately think of him, but if they think of John Lennon's end, they think of Mark David Chapman. And that tragic murder of John Lennon occurred 45 years ago, this week in history. For this new time capsule, we're going to stick to the same date, December 8th, 1980. We will try to think of the more positive sides of that date. So what else was going on in the world of pop culture back then? Well, let's find out. The number 1 song was Lady by Kenny Rogers. This song was actually written by Lionel Richie, and it was recorded on Kenny Rogers' Greatest Hits album. The song stayed at number 1 for 6 weeks and is one of Kenny Rogers' biggest hits of his career. It was a massive crossover song, but as far as Kenny Rogers and his country music goes, he had 20 number 1 songs between 1977 and 2000 on the country charts. In total, Kenny Rogers has sold more than 100 million albums worldwide in his career. The number 1 movie was Stir Crazy, and you could get into the theater with a ticket costing $2.69. This is a comedy starring Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor about a pair of convicts trying to escape from jail. This was also one of 4 films that were made with Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor, who became kind of an underrated comedy duo in the 70s and early 80s. The film was a big hit, making $101 million on a budget of $10 million. It's 69% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and actually spawned a 1985 television series, Stir Crazy. It was not as successful as the film, being canceled after 8 episodes, including one that was left unaired. The number 1 TV show was Dallas. This is the primetime soap opera about the oil baron Ewing family. The original run of the show went for 14 seasons and 357 total episodes, with the Who Shot JR cliffhanger storyline about J.R. Ewing, Larry Hagman's character, being one of the highest rated television episodes of all time. And if you were around back then, December 8th, 1980, maybe you were looking for some ideas for Christmas shopping for those you love on your list, well, I've got some suggestions for you. First and foremost, the Rubik's Cube. Maybe you get people the Atari 2600 video console system with Space Invaders or Asteroids. You could get Simon, the electronic memory game, where it made all the different patterns and you had to repeat them like Simon Says. There was loads and loads of Pac-Man merchandise, board games, t-shirts, lunchboxes. You could get the brand new Sony Walkman, maybe a BMX bike, specifically a Mongoose, Redline, Diamondback. Star Wars Empire Strikes Back figures, which are probably worth a ton if you didn't take them out of the packages like I did. A Barbie Dream House, you could get Light Bright, and a whole bunch of others, but those are some of the top ones I found in research for 1980 Christmas shopping lists. But there you go. We wrap up another time capsule, another This Week in History. Coming up now is a top 5 with things you don't want on your Christmas list, as we're going to look at the worst Christmas specials ever. And oh boy, is it going to live up to the hype. Or at least I hope so. I figured I'd start this segment off with some lovely festive holiday music before I rip into all of these worst Christmas specials ever on a brand new top 5. I will tell you, when doing research for this segment, most of these ones that I'm going to be talking about, I don't know if you will have ever heard of. I would say they're obscure, but I think they were just crap and no one saw them. My search history for this week is a lot of worst holiday specials ever lists. I wouldn't recommend any of these to you unless you have some free time that you're just looking to ruin. As you know, with most of these top 5 lists, there are some honorable mentions. The top 5 is in no particular order. So let's get into ruining the holiday season. We'll start it off with the honorable mentions. And the very first honorable mention is going to be one that, of course, I couldn't leave off this list. And that's the Star Wars Holiday Special from 1978. Of course, I had to put that on there. Another honorable mention is Nestor the Christmas Donkey. This is from 1977. Another honorable mention is Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer. This is a dark animated film from 2000 based on the 1979 holiday song of the same name. Another honorable mention is Christmas Comes to Pac-Land. This is a 1982 animated film based on the Pac-Man video game. And the final honorable mention is The Nuttiest Nutcracker. This is a 1999 animated film based very loosely on the 1892 Nutcracker Ballet. So those are the honorable mentions. I kind of flew through them to leave some more time to really dive and bury these top fives. I will say, when putting this together, there were a lot of, I can't believe this is a real holiday special that I said with a lot of these ones. So let's get into the actual top five. I hope you have kept the receipt for any of these films if you have them. We'll start with number 1, The Christmas Tree. This is an animated film from 1991. If you type in The Christmas Tree 1991 film on Google, the first thing you'll get is an article that says, how did this film get made? That's all you need to know about this. This was direct to video. It's about an orphanage run by Mrs. Mavilda, and all the kids live in miserable conditions, but she keeps the money for herself. Eventually, with the help of the children, Mrs. Mavilda turns good. The film says you always win if you're good, which I think does not apply to the real world. It gets a 1.5 out of 10 rating on IMDb. Just go on IMDb. There's almost 1,000 ratings, and they're all just like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. It is said to be basically like a slideshow of bad animation because it's so poorly done. It is currently available to watch on Tubi for free. It is 43 minutes. I would say please don't watch. You can take that soundbite of me saying please don't watch and just apply it to all of these, especially this next one, number 2, The Christmas Light. This is from 1995 about an inventor named Burton Lemon, who is a bullied elf as well as an inventor. And he gets turned into a snowman due to a mishap with one of his machines. All you need to do is look at the cover of the video. It looks like the computer animation that you would have done in the late 80s in elementary school. But the best part of the video, and I kid you not, is there's a sticker on it that says, if you liked Toy Story, you'll love The Christmas Light. All you need to do is take a picture of The Christmas Light cover and put it next to Toy Story and then say, I wonder which one I'd rather watch. It's considered one of, if not the first, CGI holiday specials. This is not the way. It could have tanked the whole industry with how terrible it looks. This is seen as very obscure, so I don't know if you'll be able to find it, thankfully. It's 22 minutes long. It gets a 1.7 out of 10 rating on IMDb. The reason there's no Rotten Tomatoes for any of these is because they're such crap. Even Rotten Tomatoes was like, nah, nobody cares enough to give it a review. If you're really curious, Burton the bullied elf that turns into a snowman becomes evil, but then turns back to good at the end. And you can watch it anywhere online for free, but again, please don't waste your time unless you're trying to fall asleep. Number 3 is A Fairy Tale Christmas. This is from 2005. There is a 2013 live action film. It is not that one. That one stars Hilary Duff, and it's got middling reviews. Like, any of these films would kill for that. This is also direct to video. This is 45 minutes long. This one I had to put in because when I searched for it, I found a website called ChristmasSpecialsFandom.com. It's like a Wikipedia just for Christmas specials. And it has a summary of this animated film. Would you like me to give you the summary exactly word for word as it is on this website? Well, you're going to get it. It says, and I quote, when a young woman accidentally triggers to Christmas Day, begins to reflection on addiction to building the Christmas tree from a North Pole in BC. No, I didn't just stroke out there. That is the exact quote on this website. It's like one of those emails you get from a scammer that doesn't speak English as their first language and they try to make it sound like they're smart. That stupid description aside, the film is about a lovely kingdom and a king that rules and he's kind and he has a daughter and she loves life and then she's kidnapped. And the kingdom becomes sad because the king spends all his time looking for his daughter and blah blah. It's not even close to what that stupid website said it was. Number 4 is Christmas in Tattertown. This is from 1988. It's about a world where everything that is discarded comes to life. This is a 30-minute animated film from 1988. It was on Nickelodeon. It was actually supposed to be a series, but the pilot ended up not getting picked up. It's about a high-strung girl named Debbie that gets sucked into this magical land. Like I said, the discarded items come to life. It's almost like the island of misfit toys. And while she's there, she decides to introduce Christmas to these things. The girl brings her doll in there with her, and when she plays White Christmas for all of these misfits, they all love it, but the doll hates it and ends up in jail. It is left unknown if they discovered the true meaning of Christmas. A big reason why I put this on the list is because of the director of this animated film, Ralph Bakshi. I found out that his claim to fame was being the director of adult animated films, X-rated animated films in the 1970s, Fritz the Cat. It was a successful X-rated animated film, but still, don't worry, at some point in the future I will do a segment about Fritz the Cat, because I could not after finding out about this for the first time in my life. And finally, number 5 on the list of worst Christmas specials ever is the Rhapsody Kids Believe in Santa. This is a CGI musical drama from 2002. I promise you that any of you out there listening right now could create a better animated film than this garbage that they made. This film has been listed as one of, if not the worst, Christmas specials ever for that just horrible computer animation that looks like a 3-year-old made it. This was meant to be the beginning of a franchise for these Rhapsody Street Kids, but it was so bad that they were like, nope, we're killing that franchise. It tells the story of how a boy named Ricky Rogers celebrates Christmas after the death of his mother. Sounds very enlightening and happy. Shockingly, this film has Mark Hamill doing voice work as a boy named Eric. I wonder if you ask him what's worse, this Rhapsody Kid Santa or the Star Wars Holiday Special, since he was in both, which one he would least like to be known for. Probably this one, I would think. The story goes that one of the producers spent $500,000 on the animation for this and trusted the animators and never checked their work until the night of the premiere. If you look this up and see this computer animation, just imagine that someone gave $500,000 for this. It's like they spent $5 on animation and pocketed the rest. But there you have it. Some of the worst Christmas specials ever. Have you ever seen any of them? Obviously, I have seen the Star Wars Holiday Special, but all the rest I have not and will not ever watch unless I accidentally turn it on and then drop dead and it plays on my computer. So we're going to go from worst holiday specials ever to possibly the worst selling video game ever. So let's dive into the story of Uncle Henry's Playhouse. Creating a video game from the brainstorming part to all the way to the end to marketing and selling it and launching it, it's an arduous process. I mentioned earlier in the Toy Story segment about my friend John and him with computer animation. He got into actually creating video games. And he has said it is not an easy process. It's like with creating anything. If you want to do it right, it's a lot of work. I'm sure everybody that creates a video game goes into it thinking it's going to be the next Super Mario Brothers, World of Warcraft, Grand Theft Auto. But for all of those successful games, successful franchises, there are ones that come out and just totally bomb. E.T., the game for the Atari 2600, which is rightfully or wrongfully noted as what caused the video game crash of 1983. There are PC games like Crazy Bus, Lion and the King, other more high-profile flops like Afro Samurai 2, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, Gotcha Force, Daikatana. These are just some of the games that were found in my research of worst-selling games, either compared to the hype or just in general. There's even a game for the Wii, Sukaban Shachurina, that sold somewhere around 100 copies. I don't know if that's worldwide, but I will tell you it's not close to the worst-selling video game ever. What if I told you there was a widely released game that sold a whopping 27 copies in the United States? Just to put that in context, the Rob and Fab album, the Milli Vanilli guys that were outed as not singing, their album that's considered one of the worst albums ever sold 2,000 copies, and this video game sold, like 1% of that. The game I'm talking about is called Uncle Henry's Playhouse. I was not ready for this when I looked up the lowest selling video game ever, because I thought it would be an interesting concept, something to talk about on the podcast, and I found Uncle Henry's Playhouse. The short version of this is that Uncle Henry's Playhouse is a 1996 puzzle compilation CD-ROM from a company called Trilobite that repackaged puzzles from The Seventh Guest, The 11th Hour, and Clandestiny. The 27 copies is a number that's widely reported all over the internet, but it is also hard to find accurate numbers for video game sales, so this story is a mix of actual fact and kind of urban legend. But I'll give you all I could find about Uncle Henry's Playhouse. Uncle Henry's Playhouse was developed and published by Trilobite for Microsoft Windows. In the UK, it was released as Uncle Henry's Mind Blower. The date I could find for release was November 18th, 1996. The cover of the game is just as weird as you would expect, with a creepy forehead with bushy eyebrows looking up, and there's this house sprouting from his bald head. It freely admits that it takes these puzzles from other games. And this Uncle Henry is putting a knight piece from chess, like he's trying to put it into this opened house. Oh, and the L in Playhouse is a knife with blood dripping on it, so yay. Like I said, it's a puzzle game, it's a compilation game. The disc assembles 12 puzzles taken from earlier Trilobite titles. 4 puzzles from The Seventh Guest, 4 from The 11th Hour, and 4 from Clandestiny. Ooh, and it adds a single new puzzle in the attic of the dollhouse framing the device. Yeah, so that's how you click all the games. It's like you mouse over this opened up playhouse, and when you get to the attic, that's where you get the new game. It's point and click puzzle solving, nothing special. Trilobite Games is still around. It was founded in 1991 in Medford, Oregon, and actually originally closed down in 1999 due to all of these failures, including Uncle Henry's Playhouse. It was resurrected in 2010. You can find it. Their website is there, trilobitegames.com, with Trilobite having a Y in it. Uncle Henry's Playhouse reuses the Henry Stoff character, who was the toy maker villain from the Seventh Guest saga. These puzzles, like I said, they're placed in a twisted dollhouse. The narrative is deliberately thin. It was meant to be more a puzzle compilation than a full sequel to any of the Trilobite games. It's almost like, in a roundabout way, when bands that have had one hit and then have had a few albums that have failed put out a greatest hits album, and it's got their one song, but then new songs on it. The one I think of is years ago when I worked in restaurants, there was a guy that worked there that for some unknown reason had Men at Work's greatest hits. They did the song Down Under, and he insisted we play this, and it was Down Under and then like 12 songs that I just was white noise. A big reason why Uncle Henry's Playhouse was brought out by Trilobite was the company was under financial pressure after the 11th Hour and other projects underperformed. So the game, if you look at it, appears to have been a quick, inexpensive product rather than taking the time to put a full, new, high-budget title out there. Looking back at these other games from Trilobite, The Seventh Guest, which I mentioned here, some of the puzzles are in there, that came out in 1993 and was seen as a big hit. It sold 60,000 copies in its first day of release and was seen as the new standard of interactive entertainment. But then came the 11th Hour game in the winter of 1995. It did allow and support 16-bit color, but it had a lot of issues, including being released in DOS when Windows 95 had come out and that was dominant in the PC game market. It also used MIDI music instead of CD audio. MIDI stands for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. It's not really music. And the gameplay and puzzles for the 11th Hour were more abstract and anagrams. So they didn't recover their costs for that game, which then leads to why they created Uncle Henry's Playhouse. It's like taking all your leftovers at Thanksgiving and throwing them in a pot and making some kind of a soup or a casserole. During my research, I found a lot of articles, retro sites, fan posts about Uncle Henry's Playhouse selling just 27 copies in the US and maybe as much as 176 copies worldwide. The only problem is it's hard to find accurate sales numbers. I'm sure that the fact that the original version of Trilobite Games closed down less than 3 years after Uncle Henry's Playhouse came out only adds to the urban legend of its low sales. Not surprising, at the time of its release, the game was criticized for having a thin plot, basically being, like I said, a greatest hits package of older puzzles. Some reviewers nevertheless said the puzzles themselves were still good, and that the low price made it tolerable for fans that only wanted the puzzles. Because of the perceived low sales, the obscure status, the ultra-low print of this game, it's been kind of a collector curiosity. As you've heard, I've put in a few little clips of what I could find of gameplay of Uncle Henry's Playhouse. But there's not a lot of action, so I didn't want to just have mood music suddenly pop up in this. I went on eBay to check if anyone was selling Uncle Henry's Playhouse. I found one copy for $130. But you can download the game online if you want. I found a site called My Abandonware, and you can download Uncle Henry's Playhouse. I'm not going to download it, so I would say use caution, just in case it's some kind of a virus on your computer. It's hard to know just whether Uncle Henry's Playhouse was actually what sunk Trilobite Games. The Seventh Guest did well. The 11th Hour was a bomb. Later projects were either canceled or underperformed, with the company finally closing in February 1999. So in my mind, I don't think Uncle Henry's Playhouse crashed Trilobite Games. I think it was already going that way. Just like I don't think E.T. caused the video game crash of 1983. I think the story of this game being the worst selling ever, it's stuck around because it shows kind of a rise and fall narrative for Trilobite Games. It's a very niche product. Like I said, I found one copy online, and you can download it. Plus, I think once that narrative gets out there of 27 copies sold, it's hard to shake that. Have any of you out there played Uncle Henry's Playhouse? Have you played any of the Trilobite games? Did you play The Seventh Guest or The 11th Hour? In the mid-90s, I was playing Sega Genesis probably still, and then getting into PlayStation. Even though the exact numbers of sales for Uncle Henry's Playhouse can't be totally concrete finding evidence, what's certain is that the game itself is a useful capsule for the end of Trilobyte's original run. A low-budget repackaging released in a company downturn. And it remains a curious item for anyone interested in how quickly fortunes changed in that CD-ROM era of the mid-1990s. But until next week, that's going to wrap up episode 223 of the In My Footsteps podcast. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for making it to the end. I hope that it has warmed you up if it's cold, or kept you company as you're out on your holiday shopping. If you need some ideas for holiday shopping, I have 10 books, including my newest one, In Their Footsteps, The Interesting People, Places, and Events of Cape Cod History. Go to my website, ChristopherSetterland.com. Go to Amazon, you can find all the books. If you like Cape Cod photography, I have an Etsy shop. You can always become a Patreon subscriber or buy me a coffee as a holiday gift to me. Don't forget Cape Cod Cthulhu, the film that is my acting debut. You can get your copies now on Blu-ray. I've got a link to the site in the podcast notes. Also, go to my YouTube channel, subscribe, of course, but I have an interview up there with cast and crew from Cape Cod Cthulhu. It's fun, it's informative, it's got the trailer in there, links to buy in there. It's a big deal. It's a first for me. I've never had a film that I've acted in, besides stuff with my camcorder in the mid-90s. And none of those got me credits on IMDb. I'll have more gifts to put under your tree next week with episode 224 of the podcast. In a bit of continuity, we will be looking at the video game crash of 1983, since I just talked a bit about it with Uncle Henry's Playhouse. We're going to look back at some forgotten game shows of the 1970s. And as we get closer to Christmas, I'm going to share the top 5 weird old holiday recipes. These are all really gross. But that's all coming up next week on episode 224 of the In My Footsteps podcast. And then the week after, the new episode drops on Christmas Eve. That is going to be mixtape number 3. We're going to be looking at product fails of the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. See how many of those you had under your trees. And then the week after is New Year's Eve. And for episode 225, I'm going to do something different, something special. I'm going to share the first ever Patreon bonus episode that I've done for my channel over there, to kind of give you an idea of what I do there, to maybe entice some of you to go and become subscribers. So that's going to be what's going on to wrap up 2025. If you enjoy my content, and I'm figuring if you made it to the end of this podcast, hopefully you do, you can find me all over social media. I'm always sharing links to everything that I'm doing. I'm on YouTube, like you know. I've got my blog channel. I've got Initial Impressions 2.0 that goes up every week. I'll be doing a kind of best of 2025 blog for Initial Impressions that'll be going up, obviously, before the end of the year. And I'll be doing it in video form for my subscribers on Patreon. So you get to see me laugh at some of the stupidity that I've dealt with this year. But let's get you guys out of here so you can continue your holiday shopping or sitting back and relaxing, which hopefully you'll get to do anyway. Stay warm, stay safe, have fun. And remember, in this life, don't walk in anyone else's footsteps. Create your own path and enjoy every moment you can on this journey we call life, because you never know what tomorrow brings. Thank you all again so much for tuning in. This has been the In My Footsteps podcast. I am Christopher Setterland. You already knew that, and I'll talk to you all again soon.